You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
We all want to be more successful in our business and our career. Today, we have a special guest who is going to share with us exactly how to do that. He's a best-selling Amazon author, adjunct professor, and business consultant to middle and executive management. Peter Christian.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So tell us more about your history, your journey, and how it's brought you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I've been in business for about 45 years. Technically, I'm retired at this point, although people have convinced me to say semi-retired now because I still stay pretty busy. But I started in engineering, worked my way into operations, spent most of my corporate career at Crayola Corporation, better known as Crayola Crayons, and got into operations and quality and research and development. But then when I left there, I decided to get into the consulting arena for a couple of reasons. One, I had the opportunity coming out of school when I was a graduate student to work for Price Waterhouse at the time. Didn't feel that just coming out of school, I really knew enough to be a help to companies and executives and so forth. So I put that off. By the time I left Crayola, I had almost 20 years of work experience, lots of knowledge I felt that I could share and help people with. So I got into the consulting arena, first through Lehigh University, through a consulting group there. And then from there, actually developed my own consulting practice with 5 other folks. That's still going well and strong since I left, which is great to hear, since I still have to pay me a bunch of money yet for leaving there. Always good. But I got into working with a variety of different companies, whether it was in different industries, different areas of the country, even outside of the country, over into Europe and China, mostly on the operational side, helping them with strategic planning, supply chain, operational improvements, cost reduction, profit improvement, continuous improvement, all sorts of improvements. And have continued that. I still get some consulting opportunities, even as a retiree. But mostly I write, I speak on shows such as your own. And as you mentioned, I'm an adjunct professor. I teach project management remotely. In fact, I have a class tonight, so I'll be getting ready for that very shortly. So I'm staying pretty busy.
Nice. That's excellent. And it seems like all the things that you're doing are focused around sharing the wealth of knowledge that you've gained over the years.
Yes, absolutely. I think if you accumulate it and you've got it, to not share it with people and to just let it pass by is kind of a sin. So I'm trying my best to share where I can with people, and hopefully they will gain through the benefits of whatever I tell them.
Absolutely. It is a huge benefit. We have to understand more and learn more in order to grow and be more successful. But learning is only that first portion that we need to take care of. It's also the action that comes after what we've
Yep.
learned.
Yep. Having the knowledge and not doing anything with it is a sin also. So you really need to do something with what you learn.
Absolutely. I had seen one of your books. I haven't purchased it yet, but I really like the title and the the description about it, the influencers and influences book.
Yes.
Can you tell me
That
more
was
about?
actually book number 2. Yep.
Nice.
You want me to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. Tell us more about that one and what it's all about and how that came to be.
Well, like I said, it was my second book. I hadn't really planned on it, but the person who was helping with the first said, well, nobody ever writes just one book. Okay. So I guess I didn't want to be the first. But I started to think about why I think the way I do, why the way I act the way I do, make decisions and so forth. And it went back to both the experiences that I had in the working world and even in growing up, but also the people that I came across who influenced me in one way or another positively. They were helps to me. They gave me great advice. They helped me when they saw that I was struggling, whether I asked for their help or not, because they were just concerned about me. And similarly, the people who did have my best interests at heart, you learn a lot from them as well about some of the things not to do and how you really need to know who you're dealing with and to vet them very, very well, because they can be leading you down the wrong path, and you certainly don't want that. And also you find out that they're doing things that you don't think are all that great and you try to avoid them. So you learn from both experiences. So that's what that book is about, is to talk about that, to give thanks to a lot of the people who did help me on a positive sense because they meant to, and to make sure that they got their due recognition. Hopefully I gave them enough when the opportunities were there and I was dealing with them. Some of them are not around anymore. They have since passed to that great business place in the sky, but I'm sure they're still looking down at me and hopefully approving of what I'm doing and how I'm doing stuff. But to give thanks to them. And that's another part of that book, is you should always give thanks to the people that are helping you, because nobody really ever makes it on their own one way or the other. There's somebody there who's giving you a hand in one way or another. And you need to make sure that you show your appreciation and give thanks for what they're doing.
I 1000% agree with you. It is all the past leaders and business managers that have shown me what to do right. And unfortunately, some of them do things in the wrong way, but we
Yeah.
also use that as a learning experience.
Okay. So read all about that book now. Go get it.
I'm gonna go get it.
No
It's
more.
free. It's free
Yeah.
with Kindle Unlimited, I believe. I just got to
Well,
sign up
yes, it
for.
is. Excuse them.
Hey,
Hopefully they'll learn from it and they will appreciate the people that are helping them. They'll recognize it and appreciate it.
absolutely. So tell me more about the path, maybe the foundation on whether we're career oriented or we're business oriented. Does that
Mhm.
take us down separate paths? Are the tips and tricks on how to be successful in those, do they differ? Is there any overlap?
Well, I wouldn't say it takes you down different paths, but your path may be a little bit different than my path and where I wound up and how I got to where I was at versus where you're at or headed to, as the case may be. And basically, you make decisions. I wanted to be in engineering. Well, after I was in engineering, I found out operations is pretty cool. And actually, the type of engineering I started in, industrial engineering, was very operations oriented, which was what attracted me. It wasn't just technical. And then from there, got into not just working for somebody, but working for lots of somebodies in a variety of different venues and all sorts of situations and so forth. I had the opportunity to do that early on and decided not to do it, but I came back around to it eventually. And the person who convinced me said, but you've probably basically been a consultant even when you were working for organizations because of the improvements you made and working with other people and so forth. So I think maybe that's the career you should head for. And I never regretted it. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't want to go back into the corporate world, so to speak. And people would say to me, how can you do that? And I'd say, well, how can you do what you're doing? At 8 o'clock at night, I'm home watching television and getting ready for the next day. And you're still working on whatever it is you're working on. I go, good point.
Yeah.
So,
The pros and cons to anything. And it's funny how our perceptions kind of change our outlook on whether we think a career is best or being a business owner is best.
yeah. And I think always you're looking for the opportunities, what's right for you. My daughter's kind of going through that right now. She's struggling a little bit. She's not totally happy at her workplace with some of the things that are going on. And I'm advising her and I'm trying to make sure that when she changes and where she changes are for the right reasons and for the right thing, not just make the change for the sake of making the change. Because there's that old saying about the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Well, that's very true in business. You can make a knee jerk reaction and get yourself in a lot more trouble than you were in before. So take it slow. Don't leave in anger, leave with your head up high. In fact, when I left Crayola, I still did work for them after I was gone. So there weren't any real bad feelings about me leaving, and there were opportunities for both of us. And I continued to do some work for them after that fact. So don't burn your bridges. Okay. I make good decisions in a sane, rational sense without anger or emotion involved, but you decide what makes the most sense for you and then go do it.
Absolutely. I think that's very smart.
I
Mr. Adam, do
learned.
you have any insight or anything you want to share? Questions?
Hi. Honestly, I was thinking you had mentioned about doing a lot of international consulting and for different sizes of businesses and stuff like that. I was just wondering, is there a correlation between the size of the business and then the pain points that you often see when you go in as a consulting capacity?
Yes and no. I think businesses have a lot of similarities. Of course, there's different sizes and they're in different arenas. So there are differences, obviously. Not everybody is the same. So that's why when you come up with a solution, I always use that term, one size fits all poorly.
Hmm.
So you don't just come out with the same rote solution for everybody, because you've got to find out what the details are. Obviously, bigger companies can run into a lot bigger problem than little companies. Of course, it's all relative because to a little company, even a small problem could be big for them. But in large companies, you're dealing with a lot more people, a lot more interactions. As they get bigger and kind of spread out, the communication sometimes isn't as good as opposed to small companies where people sit 5 feet from each other, although even that can bring problems as far as communications go if you're not talking to each other well and properly. So I think there's similarities, but it's the magnitude. Big companies obviously are dealing in millions and billions of dollars. Small companies are dealing in the thousands, tens, or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars of situations and impacts and so forth. But by and large, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with processes. Okay, hopefully processes, they've got those in place. If it's manufacturing, you're dealing with materials. Okay. You're dealing with customers, you're dealing with suppliers, all those common things. And the question is, how are those things all interacting with each other? Are they interacting well? Are you doing the right things? Do you have systems in place and are they the right ones? And are you utilizing them properly? And all those good things. So there's a lot of similarities, but each one's got its own personality to it. And they will tell you when you go in, oh, I've got such and such a problem. I can't tell you how many times as an operations person, oh, the factory floor just isn't producing. The productivity is down. We need to get that straight. So you go out and you talk to the folks out in the factory floor and production, and they go, those people in the office are out of their freaking minds. We set up our line and we go to run a product and we're just getting started. And they go, up, we got to make a change. Something came up as an emergency here or whatever. So they make us tear everything down, we get all set up and we're all set to run. They go, what, wait a minute. Something else came up, or let's go back to what we said before. So now we got to tear down. We got to put it back to the way it was. So all that time has been wasted. And then they say, well, they're not being productive. Well, yeah, because you caused them not to be productive. Or they tell you to run something and the materials aren't available, or there's a problem with the material, all sorts of stuff that they do to the production people. And then they don't realize it. They say, well, they're not producing the way they should be. That's them. And you find out that it's maybe a little bit because everything could use an improvement. That's why you have continuous improvement. But what's the real cause of the problem? Find that out and fix that, and not all those other little things that they're talking about. That's really what the key is in order to do well and to do the proper thing. You work on the wrong things, guess what? Don't expect the results that you're expecting.
Yeah.
Work on the right things and do it well, and chances are good you will solve what your issue is and you'll be really happy.
It's
Oh,
kind of
does that answer your question for you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure, I went in a lot of different directions there.
It was a very open-ended question, so no, that was
Okay.
great.
Oh, it's
So,
perfect. It's kind of like that meme where the three Spider-Mans are pointing at each other and they're like, it's
uh-huh.
production's fault. It's the office's fault. And there's just this breakdown in communication. The problem is pointing at itself. It's the lack of communication.
Now that's why as a consultant, you really have to ask a lot of questions and you really have to get the down low. People think that they know what their issue is. They're feeling the pain, but they're really not sure what it is that's causing it. And sometimes they're the cause.
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting when you're a consultant to tell somebody, well, what the problem is. Bring that mirror over here.
I'm
Take a
just,
look.
I'm just gonna say the mirror, like, you should have a seat. Maury comes out like, you are the problem.
You are the problem.
So that's a great way to kind of get a bird's eye view of businesses, processes, and where those breakdowns usually happen. How about for those who are more career focused? What is that 3-step game plan? Are there steps? Is there a process to leveling up your career?
Well, decide what it is that you want to do, get the information that you need, and then do it and do it well. But again, look for other opportunities. Sometimes there's something out there. Like when I started in college and I wanted to be an engineer, and I was thinking, well, electrical or mechanical. Well, fortunately for me, the school, which was Rutgers University, had a 12 or 14-week orientation program. And every week they would have a different engineering discipline come in and talk about what their program was and what they did and all that stuff. And this thing called industrial engineering came up, and I had never heard of it before. And I was really intrigued. So I went home for the weekend and I said to my folks, and I didn't have to declare my major yet. The first 2 years, you kind of took general engineering courses and accounting and all that stuff. And then you got into your specifics. Maybe you had one or two classes. And I said, this industrial engineering really has a lot of intrigue to me. So I explained it to them as well as I could and got more information and they got more. And that was the path that I went on. Uh, but I never intended to do that to begin with. Now, if I had stayed at it, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. I would have been a wonderful, hopefully, electrical or mechanical engineer or whatever else, and would have never gotten into some of the stuff I got into. But I did through my experiences. Again, I started engineering and I wound up in quality and research and development and operations. So I got a variety of different experiences and I took those opportunities because they were of interest to me. And then I had to learn about them because I didn't know when I got into them. I didn't know anything real. I knew about quality to a degree, but I didn't know the details of it. So I had to learn about it. And I relied on the people who worked for me to educate me and to allow them to do the things they needed to, and so on and so forth. So I think you need to do that to get the information you need to do the job that you're going to do well, but keep your eyes and ears open for other opportunities. There may be other things out there that you didn't consider, and all of a sudden that opportunity comes. And if it interests you, take it and go. Go
Hmm.
for it.
It's kind of fascinating how just these unique opportunities come about. We were never expecting them, but literally that door opens and it's up to us if we want to peek inside, if we want to go through that door and make the most of that opportunity. And who knows where all those different branches and paths are going to lead us to. We just have to go in and do it.
That's not to say that you spend all your time looking around at all the other opportunities and stuff. You still have to focus on what you're doing. But like I said, keep your eyes and your ears open. You just never know. A lot of people that go into the consulting world don't stay in consulting for a long time. They wind up working for a client who thinks that they're pretty darn smart and good and could be a good add to their organization. And they wind up working. In fact, I think a lot of the big consulting firms want that for a lot of different reasons, mostly because they now have somebody who they think is loyal to them, who is now in whatever large industry, and they're going to throw business their way. So there's all sorts of stuff that's going on.
I've
You
seen that
just
happen
never
a few
know.
times. Absolutely. There was a guest I had on about a month or two ago, and he was a part of one consulting firm, and it ends up that one of his clients ends up
Mhm.
hiring him, and now he works for them.
Yeah,
It's like you never know where the opportunities are going to present themselves, which is why it's so important for you to show up every day and make sure you're willing to learn, positive attitude, and just keep making those positive changes.
yep, absolutely.
Excellent. What is one piece of advice that you wish you knew sooner? There was one huge aha moment that you're like, wow, this is what I've been missing my entire life, or just completely shaped the way that you look and view at business or life.
Not all the people you're going to come across are either the nicest people, the most competent people, okay, or people who have your best interest at heart. When you go out in the world, you're kind of naive. You think that, yeah, somebody's going to take me under their wing, or they're doing it because they really like me. Well, they may have other reasons in mind, or they're trying to keep you from becoming the best that you can be. First job I had out of school, I worked while I was in school, but out of school, the fellow I was working for, I found out that there were people in the organization and other departments that I was working with or had come across who were interested in me and wanted to talk to me about opportunities to work in their departments and he kept me from doing it. And when I found that out, I was quite annoyed
Mm.
because that should be my decision. And quite honestly, I would think that a good manager or somebody wants to see his people grow and thrive and do well, would encourage them and not make that decision, maybe be part of it. If an opportunity came and you looked at it, then you could sit and talk about it and the pluses and but if you just cut them off because you think that you're going to keep them, well, guess what? It wound up being exactly the opposite. I got so ticked off that I wound up leaving the company because of that. I thought if you're going to keep me from possible other opportunities, then I'm not going to stay here. I had a lot of professors who worked in the real world before they became professors. So they knew what the ins and the outs of the business were, and they could give me some good advice. Nowadays, a lot of the professors are just professors. They don't work in the real world. They work in the academic world. And it's hard for them to give you advice on that because they're not experiencing it themselves. So they don't know. That's why I'm trying to do some of the stuff I'm doing. And I spend time with students and encourage them and try to mentor them and give them the best advice that I can. And hopefully from that, they will learn stuff and not to be suspicious of everybody, but just to have enough inquiry to say or to challenge things. One of my professors always told me is always challenge things, be a little bit skeptical and find out the real story because you're not always going to get it.
Absolutely. We can't just go in thinking everyone has our best interest in mind. It's not sunshine and rainbows. We really have to have that skepticism about us to make sure that we're asking the right questions and we question people's motives and what's in it for them. So that way we make sure that we're not getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah. And the other side of the coin is don't be paranoid where everybody's out to get you. That ain't true either. Okay.
Just constantly looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. There's not that dark, shadowy figure following you and trying to do you in. There's no Boris Badenoff after you trying to blow you up.
It can feel that way sometimes, but we gotta
They could,
try
but
to stay
that's
positive.
absolutely.
That's brilliant. So as an example, when you go into consult with a business and you're trying to help them improve, what does that look like? I'm sure a lot of it is kind of you're getting a bird's eye view of their business. You're trying to understand their goals or what their pain points are. Can you kind of take me through that process?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's the inquiry to find out if somebody has an issue or they think that they have an issue. And that gets you in the door to at least talk to them and to tell them a bit about who you are and some of the things you've done with other organizations and how that might impact them. Although, again, just because you did a fix for one company doesn't mean it's going to be the same fix for them and the results are going to be. But anyway, you need to listen to them. I always like the term, what keeps you awake at night? Or the question, what keeps you awake at night? That's a good opening question because that opens up all sorts of floodgates and basically says, what is it that's really bothering you? You probably have a million problems, but what's the one problem that really bothers you and you spend a lot of time on to the point that it even keeps you awake at night thinking about it? And they open up and they tell you they may not have thought about that when you were coming in. The other one is when you come up with the solution or you think you do, you say to them, now, if we make these changes, how does that fit with your company's plan, your strategic plan? And that's an interesting one too, because you find out a lot of times they don't have a strategic plan. And you go, well, we better come up with where you want to head and what you think this is going to do for you because we could fix something, but it might not be the thing that really works. There's so many problems that companies have and so many things, and it's picking the right things to work on that are really going to make a difference because you can work on all sorts of little things and they don't melt with the beans when you get done. They go, we spent all this time and this money and we didn't get the results. Well, yeah, because we're working on the wrong stuff. I studied theory of constraints. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the guy who came up with the theory of constraints, Ellie Goldratt, called them chupchicks. Okay. Things that you work on that don't matter and you stay away from those. So you need to find out what the important stuff is and stay away from the chupchicks.
Mhm.
That's always been my philosophy. See, there's a lot of inquiry. And like I said before, they tell you one thing about, oh, they're not productive out on the floor. Well, go talk to the floor people. Don't just take their word for it and find out, because there's always multiple sides to a story, not just two. So find out what's really going on. And then you can come back with truly what it is you're going to work on and how you're going to work on it and where you think you're going to end up when everything is concluded. So I think that's the important thing. A good consultant will do that. If they just go in and they take the person's word for it and they work on it, I guarantee you, through 3/4 of the time, it's going to be the wrong thing, and people are going to be very unhappy. And they're going to blame the consultant, of course, for it, not because they did anything wrong. So
Mhm.
consultants always get blamed.
Right, because you're the
Just
one
goes with the
offering solution.
territory. That's life. Yeah. Anyway, so I would say that's the big thing going in. What keeps you awake at night? What really bothers you?
That's really smart because it can really get to just that biggest cloud that's over their head right now. And that right there, I feel like demonstrates the entirety of the value that you're bringing. You're going in, asking a lot of questions, trying to gain an understanding of what's really going on. And then you make sure that the proposed solution follows their strategic plan. And if they don't have one, well, it sounds like you need to get one. So now that can kind of be your guiding map towards the right path that we take.
Yeah, sometimes you can work on something that'll cause problems for the company if you do the wrong thing. Okay. Or goes against where they really want to be. And you don't want that either. You're going to spend a lot of time and you're going to spend a lot of their money doing this stuff. You want to see a successful result. I always took it very personally. I did not like to see me and them not succeed. It wasn't good for either of us. Okay. I wanted a happy client. I wanted a successful client. I wanted to feel good about the work that I did. I took it as though they were my company and I benefited or didn't based on what happened or didn't happen, as the case may be. I still do.
That can be important too, not only for your self worth, it gives you the purpose, that driving force, but also the business that you're working with. They realize you now are kind of showing invested interest into their success as well. So you're kind of gaining a partnership when you go in with your consulting work.
Absolutely. And that's key. They need to trust you. They need to listen to you. They need to do what you tell them to do. All right. They need to challenge it. Again, there's nothing wrong with them challenging it, because if it's good and it's going to work, then there's no problem with it. You just justify it and you move on. If it isn't, then that's where things get a little mucky, because if you can't explain it and it doesn't sound like it's going to work, it probably isn't going to work. You want them to do that because you want them to understand it. The other thing I told the client is, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be responsible for your success or failure. You are going to be. I'm here to give you the best advice I can, to guide you, hopefully to help you implement whatever it is. But I'm going to walk out that door. And if you haven't done it right, or you don't understand it, or you stop doing what we agreed upon when I walk out that door, it's all for naught. Okay. Because you're dependent on me now, and nobody should be dependent on an outsider. Again, they're there to help and to provide stuff that you may not have, but you better darn well pick it up and then deal with it on an ongoing basis, or you're going to fail over the long term.
You can give them the plan and the tool and the strategy, but unless they're willing to execute it and do it well, well, then that's all it is. It's just a good idea.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of good ideas out there that never get implemented properly.
Absolutely. It's a huge negative downside to our business when we have
Mm.
great ideas, we can't execute them well, or I don't even know why that is.
Well, there's all sorts of reasons. We could spend a whole other session. Maybe we will on that someday. Why great ideas don't get implemented or whatever.
That's your third book idea. I'm excited for that
No,
next launch.
I got it. What about what keeps you awake at night? I got plenty of stories about
It'll be a spooky story.
it. Will be very spooky. Yes. I'm going to bring it out on Halloween. Woo.
I think you're gonna create a new genre, business horror.
There you go.
Right? He didn't refill the copier. Oh no. Now, Peter, where can people find out more about you, your business, and what you're doing? How can they get in touch with you?
3 ways. LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. Look for Peter Christian, author, adjunct professor, speaker, consultant. Look for this gorgeous face. Okay. So that's number one. And number two, I have a website and it's Pete. So leave the R off, Pete Christian Books. Okay. There's a place in there where you can, well, there's lots of places. You can read articles that I've written. You can read about the books. You can send me information or questions or whatever, and we can start a conversation. Of course, do that on LinkedIn. You can hook up and we can talk. And number three is my email address, which is my initials PH and then my last name Christian3@gmail.com. You can send me an email. That's phchristian53@gmail.com and say, I heard you on the show and I thought some of what you said was really good, or I thought it was a bunch of booey and I'd like to talk to you about it. Whatever the case may be, and we can start a conversation and see where it goes. In a lot of cases, I don't charge for advice anymore, but if it gets really involved, then who knows where that leads to. If I can provide some insight and provide some guidance to somebody, more the better.
I'm sure a lot of people out there are curious to know a bit more and are kind of struggling right now. They might have something that's keeping them up at night. So just a quick phone call to Peter here, see if he can help you out with the problem, shed some light on the situation, and help you find your path along the way.
Or go buy those books like you're going to do.
Exactly.
Read them.
If you're more self-taught
There
and
you go.
self-help.
That's it.
I love it.
Peter, one last question for me. I never spoke to anybody who's worked at Crayola before. So your time there, do you have a favorite Crayola color specifically?
Well, red has always been my favorite color. So I guess it still is my favorite color. I don't know how many they have now, 9 bazillion colors.
Like 20
It
minutes.
used to be 9. The big box was 64, and then they went to 96, and then they went to 120. I don't know what it is anymore. I've lost track. But red is an old standby. It's one of the foundation colors, right? One of the basics as part of the color spectrum that you can deal with other colors from. So I guess red would still be my favorite color.
I love it. I like the granny apple red. That's a pretty solid
Granny
red.
apple red?
Yeah. I'm pretty
I'll
sure.
just stick to red. Okay. You can have the granny apple part.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Peter, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Make sure you check out the links in the description to find out more about Peter and his businesses and consulting. Again, thanks so much for your time. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you again for having me. It was my pleasure.